Hello and welcome to Friday live stream. This time is with one and only Gray. Levett is in the house.
Hello everyone.
For some of you who might not know Gray, he actually the one who owns Gray's of Westminster, who starts at Gray's of Westminster, and keeping an eye on us really, keeping us on a leash. You know, sometimes I can talk too much, but it's great to see you here.
Well, thank you for inviting me back. Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about Nikon history again, part 2.
We are, yeah. We had a really nice response from the one that we did before, and hopefully that will continue. So we're, I think we got up to the Nikon F, and I mentioned in there Yasuko Kamakura.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And he was the brilliant designer who created the pyramid design of the Nikon F, and we've got a very early example here. Most of the sort of Nikon 35mm single lens reflex of the time were more rounded. This was very, very different. Also was with the F emblem on the front facing part of the eye level pentaprism there. And I think you've probably got a picture of Mr. Kamakura.
Oh yes, let's find him. I'm just going to press steal and let's see if the thing is going to work. But we're starting straight away. We will pause for a moment, but we'll look at the picture first because I have some interesting things for you to show before we get into the grips with the Nikon F design and all the camera system. But let's see if we get the picture going. Here's the picture. Here's us on the bottom of the screen. Technology works.
Absolutely. Yes, so there he is. A very, very important factor in Nikon's early history. He not only designed the Nikon F, he was responsible for their brochures, their posters, and in fact, I was reading a little bit earlier today, in 1966, the Ministry of International Trade and Industry gave it the Good Design Award for the Nikon F, which was a first for them.
He's also a man behind the summer 1964 Olympics logo in Tokyo as well.
That's right, yeah, so he was.
There's some books available online. They're all out of print, but I think you have one, don't you?
By him?
Yes.
Yeah, I do, yes. Yeah. It's that red-facing book over
red-facing
there.
book? Oh, yes.
You see it, yes. Oh, yeah. So there it is. It's called Yasuko Kamakura Poster Exhibition, which took part in Tokyo. And there's a number of examples of some of his designs. I don't know if that's very clear for you.
Should be fine, Gray, yeah.
Should, yeah. And what's the other one? One for the SP, their rangefinder camera, and of course the F with that very, very that pyramid design, that very sharp design. There was quite a bit of resistance to him doing that design originally, but he won through, and of course he was proved absolutely right.
That's right. I think if you look at the history now, from this point, he was absolutely right.
Yeah.
We're going to pause for a moment. What I want to show is the 2 new lenses that literally we've got them in. Well, one yesterday and one came in today. First one is the 28-400 lens is finally shipping. For some of you who pre-ordered, we have a small batch came in. You probably already got the email or phone call from us, so they're on the way to you. Me and Becky are looking forward to testing it and just trying it out in the field and comparing the 24-200 lens as well. So we will test it for about a week. We're going to film next Saturday, and hopefully we can share our findings with you. Now, the next lens is also quite interesting. It's the Tamron 28-75 lens 2.8. It's a generation 2. And again, it's quite a polarizing release. some of you may know that Nikon has 28-75 lens that was based on Tamron glass. This is generation 2. So again, me and Becky are looking forward to comparing a Nikon version of that lens to a newly released Tamron. Again, you're welcome to pre-order this lens, so available on our website, but just so you know, we've got those lenses in and I'm very excited.
And as you're getting to hopefully warmer, less wet weather, you and Becky won't have so many challenges to the bad weather.
Absolutely, but you never know. Sometimes you have a filming schedule on this day, and then it's just raining, and you have to do with what's given to you. But back to Nikon cameras. So Nikon F was based on Nikon rangefinders originally, wasn't it?
The body design was based on, well, if you like, the SP. It's got those sharp corners. So they took that really as a working basis to create the F, and they worked on it for several years, obviously, before they eventually released it. It was released in 1959, and it kind of took off pretty much immediately. Really, it's excuse me, it hit America very big, and because it was a camera where you had not only interchangeable focusing screens, but you had interchangeable finders, and so you could put on a waist level or an action finder. And later on, when they developed a metered finders, what we now call the photomics, or called photomics at the time, they would fit too, plus a motor drive. The F36 was introduced, and they also developed bulk film backs. Now here we've got this beauty. It's a black F with motor drive, and it's brand new. Although it doesn't have its box, it's pristine. It has not been touched, and it's a thing of beauty. It's quite a late example. It's got some of the cosmetics that they called the Apollo cosmetics, because it chimed in with the Apollo space missions. And so bulk film backs, 250 exposure backs, a wide variety. In fact, there's a rather classic poster that they brought out, which I think Kon has got a copy of.
Let's have a look. Here we go. Got a wonderful poster here. It's going to show up in a few seconds. But what was the need for SLR design? So Nikon started with rangefinders. Why did they decide to go with a completely different mount? And again, F mount was introduced with Nikon F, and also design the SLR type of view instead of rangefinder.
Well, I guess they could see that with the development of 35mm single lens reflex cameras, they would be left behind if they didn't also compete in the market. And they were determined to compete at the highest level by having a camera that had everything that a professional would need, and also a sublimely well-built, engineered cameras. And they are still being used today, and I've got one.
Oh yeah, they beautifully made. One of the interesting parallels that I can say that Nikon Z mirrorless camera didn't come first. Nikon was not first manufacturer of SLR design. They came in after some manufacturers already released their SLR cameras. But if you look now, how many of you are still using Nikon cameras, and how many of you using other brands? So that's the thing. Nikon always took their time, but made sure it's done properly.
Yes, well, I think the longevity of the F mount is a testament to that. Up until the release of the mirrorless cameras, they kept that F mount in, so you really could use a modern lens on your grandfather's Nikon F.
And while other manufacturers were replacing their mounts quite often, just looking even, let's say, at Canon history, Nikon stuck with their F mount till pretty much late in the game. And even now, if you bought a mirrorless camera, you can still buy an FTZ adapter and put your Nikon F glass on that and use it this way. We can even adopt Nikon S rangefinder lenses now on mirrorless bodies. And that's incredibly exciting.
It is.
Me and you tried 135 very recently.
We did, yeah.
And it was very interesting. So it's something that we might film a video about.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have got, did you show the Master of All He Surveys poster?
This one, yes. Yes, we did.
Not the red one, top right.
Let's have a look. Let's get this one going. Here we go. There's another picture coming right up. So that's another post. In the meantime, I just want to say thank you. He's opening our coffin fund, and he's saying history from enthusiasm is always great. Store was nice and busy earlier. Have a coffee. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gene. He is saying good morning to me and you, and also Jay for the coffee fund. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much indeed. It's greatly appreciated and needed, really, isn't it?
Oh yes, absolutely. It's always
our defibrillators.
Exactly. Keeping us going.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got the man who owns a Nikon camera. I really like that type of advertising. We're not seeing those anymore. I think we should start very similar one, and then just instead of the man, call it a person, really.
Oh. Don't take me down. Oh dear God. But it's a great poster. In fact, when Uli Koch released his extraordinary 3-volume set on the Nikon F, which was the cameras, the lenses, and the accessories, it was a huge achievement. He had a picture of himself duplicating that shot, surrounded with all the paraphernalia that was available for the F at that time. And in fact, if you're interested in his stuff, I'll just show you this, if I may. It's a book that he produced called Nikon 100, and it was for the 100th anniversary. It is heavy, and it is chock-a-block, full of stuff, lenses, bodies, you name it. It's a constant reference work for me, and in fact I used it today when I was doing some research on dates for you.
Thank you very much, Ian. We really appreciate it. My thinking is, so that poster that we've shown before, it kind of represents our average camera collectors nowadays, because you can't have too many lenses and too many cameras, let's be honest.
That's right.
How many cameras do you have in your collection? A part of thousands of cameras that are here at Gray's.
How many have I got? I actually don't know. I mean, I did have a collector many years ago who he had over 2,000 Nikons in his collection, including some that were sequential serial number blocks and prototypes. It was extraordinary. It was extraordinary, the stuff he had. And there were two collectors at the time, and one was based in Europe. This gentleman was based in Europe, and the other gentleman was based in Hong Kong. And if one came into the store, as if by magic or some sort of intuitiveness, the other one would ring up and say, "What's he buying?" And they would always have a battle. So when there was an auction going on, I always kept my head low, because they just would battle it out between one another.
How difficult to find those rare cameras nowadays?
It's getting more and more difficult, because largely, quite rightly, they were made to be used. So I'm finding it more and more difficult to find examples like this. I mean, fortunately, Gray's of Westminster is coming up next year for its 40th anniversary. So, and I was selling Nikons prior to that. We've built up many contacts over the years, and we do get approached from time to time, either to buy an estate with somebody, or it's a camera shop that's got something in, or a distributor that's got a warehouse, and they find some unsold things which we are very keen to buy, obviously.
There's one question from the chat. Are those cameras still serviceable?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I have my rather well-used Nikon F F36, serviced every few years, and they're like tanks, really. They just need to be, well, like any mechanical thing, they need to be looked after, and they need to be used as well.
but we had some issues with light meters. Is that correct?
Yes. When Nikon introduced the photomic finders, it's got a kind of carbon track inside, and if it ever failed, Nikon would supply and fit a new carbon track. But some years after the discontinuation of the F, when we were really into F2 and F3 territory, they started to disappear. And in fact, I bought out a distributor overseas, and he had 250 odd of these carbon tracks, and I bought the lot.
Oh, wow.
And so they went over a few years. Now we can't. We could not fix it if it was gone.
So the plain prism is fully mechanical Nikon F. That means that you can just use this one. But even if the light meter doesn't work on those prisms, you can still use them mechanically because they're fully mechanical cameras.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Just use a separate meter.
Fantastic. Colin is asking, how much was this camera at the release, and how much is it now? Well, now it's a fortune, but...
Well, this is £6,500 as it stands. Gosh, you're really challenging me here on prices. I will find out for you. My recall of it was you're talking about, well, I came into it in the late 60s, and I think it was in £300 or £400.
Okay.
So it wasn't cheap, but yeah.
It wasn't cheap.
No.
Original Nikon F, when it came out in 1959, at least according to Wikipedia, so the price was £186 with 50mm f2. That's gone up in 1963 for $233 for the body itself with a standard prism, which is the one here. And then you could pay $90 for 50 f2 lens or $155 for 50mm 1.4 lens. Obviously, this would be adjusted to the current inflation, probably would cost a lot more.
That's right. And by the way, by 1965, that's 6 years after the release of the Nikon F, they'd sold over 200,000 Nikon cameras. And the 200,000th, as I may have mentioned, I believe in our last edition of this particular show, was presented to David Douglas Duncan, as Nikon said, who made Nikon and Nikkor brand names all over the world. And I understand the serial number was DDD.
DDD, the famous DDD. Definitely, if you haven't seen the previous parts of this live stream with Gray, where we talk about rangefinders as well as start to talk about Nikon F, it's available on our channel. Definitely have a look at this. There's a lot of interesting stories right there. Just looking at the chat, there's quite a few questions coming up that are not related to the topic today. So we'll ask them at the end of the live stream. So don't worry, we'll try to answer as many as possible on those. All right, so how many versions of Nikon F did they have? Was there quite a few?
Yes, so you had the Nikon F, and then you had the various metered versions. So you had the Nikon F Photomic, and we've got a picture of one there taken by master photographer. It's the blue, see
That's
that
the one?
Yeah. Taken by the master photographer, Tony Hurst. And it's kind of got that sort of Cyclops look to it.
And that's a 51.4 lens? Or is it? That's a good question.
It probably is. Knowing Tony, it would have been. I can't really tell from here.
It's quite tiny, isn't it?
It's quite a tiny image, yeah. Anyway, beautiful shot. And so it was still metering through the head rather than the body at that time. Later on, they developed the Photomic TTL. So you had the F Photomic T, the TN, and then the last model they made was called the FTN, which was their most accurate and wide-ranging photomic finder. And they look pretty much the same. That's the one that stands out more because of that kind of little cyclops eye on the front.
And then we have the German version as well with the Nikkor logo instead of Nikon, isn't it?
Yes. Well, between 1960 and 1970, Nikon were not allowed to use the Nikon name in Germany. There was an injunction against them because the Germans felt that the word Nikon was too much like icon, as in Zeiss icon, and therefore all their cameras, all their accessories, all their branding, all their brochures, all their posters, instead of saying Nikon F, had to say Nikkor. And we've got a photograph of a Nikon F.
Let's find that.
Which we can...
Can't seem to find it. Where is it? It's probably this one, if I'm not mistaken. Let's just stick it on. We have little thumbnails on our software, so we're not 100% sure if that's the right shot, but we'll show it, and I think it's the one, if I'm not mistaken. So basically, it's just the front of the camera, the logo, which just says Nikkor instead of Nikon, but the rest is the same.
Exactly.
That's the one.
Yeah, that's the one there. And actually, what happened was, when that problem went away, they could use the word Nikon to sell their products over there. They offered people the opportunity, if you send us your Nikon F, we'll put on your Nikkor F, we'll put on the word Nikon for you and swap them over. And as a result, now the serious collectors collect Nikkor Fs. They are scarce.
It reminds me of the Rolex collectors. If they get a watch with a little fault, maybe something's not aligned properly, or let's say a letter misspelled or something like this, apparently those watches go for a fortune. So it's
I have never been able to understand why an error is more valuable
Indeed.
than something that's made perfectly.
Collector's market is a mysterious thing, that's for sure.
Bless their hearts, though. We couldn't do without them. Do you want to bring up that picture?
Let's have a look. So there's a very interesting shot we have for you, and I'm sure it will spark conversation, because Nikon didn't only make lenses for themselves and cameras, they also made lenses for other brands. For example, on this shot, we will see quite a few cameras, and obviously we all know about,
Bronica?
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. So
Bronica Deluxe.
Bronica system. So we all know about that. But if you look at the shot over here, there's quite a few cameras in here. So the one I recognize, Makina 6.7, because I want to buy this one, and it's way too expensive. It's almost going for my Mia prices on eBay nowadays.
That's right. Well, starting off, the Bronica Deluxe, which is on the far left-hand corner, the grey finish one, was 1958. At the top center is the Marshall Press, which is a Japanese 6x9 centimeter camera. Is 1967. And if we go over, we've got the Ayres Flex there, which is a twin lens reflex. That was got Nikkor lenses. In fact, I think Becky showed one on one of your shows before.
Possibly, yeah.
That someone kindly loaned us. That's 1958. In front of the Marshall Press, you've got a Mamiya 6 there.
Is that the earlier Mamiya 6?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right, folding camera. And then right at the front on the left is the 1948 Nikkor, and that's spelled Nicca.
Okay.
And to the right is the 1936 Canon Hansa, and it has Nikkor lenses, because at the time Canon didn't have their own optical works, and so they gave that particular job to Nikon.
Yeah, the design reminds me of the early Leicas, or the Barnacks as they call them. Very interesting. And they all have screw mount. Is that what it was?
They are like a screw, yeah.
How interesting.
Because in fact, the Nikon did make a number of Nikkor lenses with the Leica screw fit, which David Douglas Duncan originally used on his Leica cameras before eventually moving over to Nikon.
That's true. And of course, we have Nikon large format lenses. We've got larger lenses, all sorts of lenses that Nikon designed for them. Paul Montgomery saying hello and enjoy your coffee. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Champagne Sumo is asking, what's your favorite Nikon film camera?
That's a good question. I've got the Nikon F, obviously. I was actually drawn to it because two things happened. One was that a camera shop I was working in at the time, a young chap came in, obviously fairly well heeled, and he handed me one of these, black, with a motor drive, but he didn't know how to put in the batteries, which I put in for him, and it was my first time of handling something that was so beautifully engineered. But in the 60s, Antonioni made a film called Blow Up.
Yes.
And there's a
picture
featuring the actor David Hemmings. You got it there.
That's one of your favorite movies, isn't it?
It's an unusual film. Yeah, it's got a great combination. It's to me a vapid teenager who was keen on photography. This chap who had this fabulous studio, drove a fancy car, had all these glamorous models, and he was shooting with a Nikon F and a Hasselblad 500C, which as an impoverished sort of student, I greatly desired, but also it had an appearance by the band the Yardbirds, playing in a club in London where they had both Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck in it, and Jimmy Page went on to form the mighty world-conquering Led Zeppelin. So it had a big effect on me, that film, and it made me want to do photography seriously, or find some way of doing, the two things, which was sort of photography and my love of music, really. Yes,
my first time when I watched, I was about 17.
Really?
And
what did you make of it?
I thought, well, when the things are gonna start to happen, throughout the whole thing. But then I was taking screenshots of the cameras, and I was trying to Google them, and that we're talking about 25 years ago. Because back in the day, it was still film photography, and I didn't know what cameras were those. I didn't know what Hasselblad was at the time. Oh, so for me, the first time I watched it was more about cameras.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and then obviously it grew on me later on. Yeah, I rewatched it several times.
Yeah, it is a sort of a 60s oddity, and there's definitely some weird, rather surreal parts to it. It's a bit like if you've ever seen that television series, a brilliant television series called The Prisoner, not the later remake, but the one with Patrick McGoohan, and that's very surreal too.
I have to watch that.
You've not seen that?
I haven't seen that, no.
It's brilliant.
Writing it down.
Yeah.
The Prisoners.
Yeah, with Patrick McGoohan.
Patrick, I'll get it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, write it down if you haven't watched it as well. Okay, so Nikon Fs. Did we cover everything on Nikon F? So there was still more?
There's one I'd like to show you, which is the if I can just see it on your wee screen there. Let's have a look.
On those little tiny thumbnails.
Where there's a couple of there's the high speed F bottom one. There you go.
Here we go. Let's show that. Here we go. How did this come to be?
Well, that was done for the Winter Olympic Games in Sapporo.
I see.
And so it's got a pellicle mirror. So, in other words, part of the light goes through the glass
Yes.
onto the film, and part goes up, is reflected up into the viewfinder because it would have shattered it.
Yes.
At that time, going at that speed. So what we've got on the top there is you've got a finder where you could dial in the different lenses. And
I
that
see.
was 7 frames a second.
7 frames a
Which
second.
was unheard of at the time.
So you're looking at roughly 5 seconds to go through a roll of 636 exposure film. Incredible.
Yeah. And those were made for that. Some of them got returned to Nikon for some winter games in Canada, and eventually they upped it to 9 frames a second. And even less of those. There was only, I believe, only a few hundred made. We've got one on display, of course, downstairs. It's a remarkable testament. I mean, there've been all sorts of, different Fs, of course, and although we don't have one here, the Photomic FTN version, a stripped down version for space, was taken on the first missions. It wasn't just Hasselblad that went along. It was Nikon too.
Is there, if you fly to the moon, can we find the Nikon F in there?
No, I think those came back.
Mm-hmm.
I think all the cameras. I think all the cameras came back. Yes.
Yeah, Hasselblad is somewhere in the studio where they filmed the landing.
Well, it's funny because you often hear these conspiracy theories saying, actually it was Stanley Kubrick who.
Indeed.
I can't imagine that anyone would have enough money to satisfy Mr. Kubrick's what he would have demanded, and I don't think he would have wanted to. He was in, well, as we know, because he was a client here for many years, and he definitely was in charge of his own ship.
Yeah, I thought he did a brilliant job with that. But I'm sure that when you've met him several times, did you ask him about that?
I did not. No.
Gray can't share this information with you. It has to be safe.
No, don't do that.
But coming back to Nikon F, and sports, so they had Action Finder, and Action Finder is this little big thing that goes on top of the camera. But they also had 250 frames back design.
That's right.
So that would be paired with a motor drive.
It is a motor drive.
Yeah.
It's a motor-driven back.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So it was 100-footer film.
So you would buy a canister of film and just load it up in the darkroom. Is that what it was?
Film, and then Nikon developed a bulk film loader that you could actually set how many frames you wanted to have in there. You could do the full lot, and you'd put it on and wind it on the darkroom into your cassette, and then put your cassette into the back of the 250 back, and pull the leader out so it would go into the take-up spool of the canister on your right.
It would take a while to load it up into the Putson tank, I think. All in the dark room without seeing.
It would be a nightmare. It would be a nightmare.
I also found the Polaroid back for Nikon F in my research.
Oh, the Speed Magni.
Speed Magni.
Yeah.
Apparently, they modified it later on to use the 600 cassettes as well.
Yes. What it was a thing that bolted onto the back of your Nikon F and came underneath. And the way they got the image to enlarge was in the back was an Nikkor enlarging lens, which then would transmit the image onto a larger mirror, which then came out as a sort of end print size. I've had a couple here over the years. I've never ever tried one.
Maybe we should get one. They're about £400 on eBay.
Are they?
Yeah.
Good grief.
It wasn't exactly a portable setup, was it?
It was not. No.
All right, let's see the chart. So people are asking the questions. Someone pointed out, is that then an Agfa isolet far right? I assume it would be
Oh, that one.
That one.
You know, it could well be. Tony Hurst took this picture, and I was trying to reach him before this transmission, but I think he's out on a shoot, and I cannot read what it says on the top here, and I've tried turning up this way, but I will endeavour to find out for you if later on when I speak to him over either today or over the weekend, and if I do, actually, if you email me at Gray, Gray, at greaterwestminster.co.uk, I'll be happy to do the research and answer you as soon as I find out.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Richard. We greatly appreciate it. Shall we move on to Nikon F2?
Yep.
Let's have a look what's in there. So when did the Nikon F2 come out?
September 1971. And it was the replacement for the F, although the F continued in production to 1973.
How interesting. So they had it from 1959 till 1973. You don't see it nowadays with digital cameras, do you?
No, you don't. No. The time between flagships models was usually a decade, and so we got the F2, and there was two versions available. There was a plain prism version just called an F2 with a DE1 finder, and there was a metered version called the Nikon F2 Photomic with a DP1 finder. And I think I've got a picture there by Tony Hurst.
Let's find this.
Of just the, do you see it's the second one down? The second row, second one down.
That's the one?
Yeah.
Perfect. It's coming right up. Was it a complete redesign, or was it based on the Nikon F?
Well, a lot of it changed. In fact, instead of these sort of like, excuse me, it had rounded corners. You didn't have to take the entire back door off, load of film. It was on a hinge.
Oh yes, the original Nikon F had a rangefinder design, therefore you had to remove the backplate completely, like a style in a way, with the whole film back coming off as well as the base.
Yes, because I remember when Clint Eastwood was making The Bridges of Madison County, he'd been using, I think, F to M2s at the time himself, and he was being taught about how to use a Nikon F, and he was told the Nikon F's like an old Ford T pickup truck, those grand old American trucks. He drives an old pickup as the character that he played, Robert Kincaid, the National Geographic photographer, based on we understand, our good chum Jim Brandenburg.
Incredible.
Yeah. So we had that. So you had the non-metered finder and the metered finder.
Okay, so the metered finder was, can you service those already, or
absolutely,
those are fully serviceable?
Yeah, no problem at all.
So if someone who is looking for the camera now with a light meter and the earliest possible, would you recommend to get Nikon F2 over Nikon, let's say Nikon F Photomic, just for the future proof?
Well, if you want to use it, I would be more inclined to look towards one of the F2 models with a photomic finder. I mean, if you can find a Nikon F, the trouble is, if we had a Nikon F Photomic FTN, let's say, that was working, we couldn't guarantee if the meter failed that we could fix it. In fact, I'm pretty certain that we couldn't. You would have to use a separate meter.
Oh, I see.
Whereas we don't have that problem with the F2 series. We can still get them serviced.
That's incredible. And then they had quite a few versions of F2 as well.
Yes. So you had the F2 Photomic, and I made some notes here that I can just run by. If you bear with me a moment and talk amongst yourselves.
I'll just have a look at the chart as we speak. Some people, so Richard says he recently inherited his father's Nikon F2.
Yeah.
And the small drop of water enters into the body by the rivers on the side. The shutter corroded shut, and then he managed to free it up. It'd be fully repaired now. Would love to get it restored if possible.
Yeah.
That would be incredible. And it's not just a good camera, but also it carries memories. Yeah.
Sure. Well, when you think about it, really, the Nikon is as well made as the Nikon F. Although it didn't have interchangeable finders, and you couldn't change the focus of the screen, you couldn't put on a motor drive, and it was always derisively referred to by certain people as the poor man's Nikon F. It was far from it. It was still 100% of the viewfinder.
Mm-hmm.
They are still terrific. Our good friend, the late Simon Marsden, shot all of his stunning infrared black and white ghostly images using a range of Nikkor which he stuck to his entire professional life. So the F2 stayed until we got the F2S, mm-hmm. which was in 1973. And it had a rather big finder, and it had this sort of solid state light, which had LEDs in the finder with two arrows mm-hmm. moving backwards and forwards. It had better lower light facility than the F2 Photomic. Mm-hmm. There was actually, although I never experienced it, some people said it had a fault with it, that sometimes if you move from one lighting extreme to another, it might still hold the former exposure.
Oh, I see. So it wouldn't change it.
Yeah. I never came across a single instance of this ever being correct, but they greatly improved on it with the F2SB, and we should have a picture of the F2SB there.
Just coming back to it, it wasn't a bug, it was a feature. It's called exposure lock nowadays, where you can focus and recompose and keep the exposure going.
That's
but yes.
Right.
All right, so we got which one? F2SB.
F2SB.
F2SB. Let's find this camera over here.
And the SB stands for silicon blue diode, and it was only available for. You get it? Okay.
Yep, it's coming.
Yeah. It was only available for a year between 1976 and 1977, so it makes it hugely desirable by collectors if you can find a nice one. And this is another one of Tony's stunning pictures.
What was the reason for that, for being released for such a short time?
Well, because if you remember, when you put a lens onto a Nikon F Photomic,
yes,
in order to couple it properly with the metering head, you had to set the lens at 5.6. You had to put it in, turn it, give it a couple of twists, and then a prong from the metering head would drop down between the blades, or rabbit ears as the American calls it, and then you give that a twist and it would set what the widest aperture of the lens was to couple it to the meter. In an effort to make their lenses more compact, Nikon introduced automatic AI, automatic indexing.
Indexing, yeah.
Yeah. So what was around here, although I can't really show you on this, was a little ridge here, and so the minute you put your lens on, it connected with that ridge, and immediately it was coupled. Also, you didn't have to have anything to do with a metering prong. You didn't have to set it at 5.6. And those lenses became what we now call AI lenses, automatic aperture indexing. Those early lenses still retained the coupling fork, so it was backwards compatible through all the earlier incarnations of the F2 and also the Nikon F.
So you could close this little latch down, push it down, and then you can mount the older pre-AI glass. If you know Nikon DF, it has a very similar feature.
Yeah, that's right. And so the F2SB, the AI version of it was the F2AS.
I see.
And they did an AI version of the F2 Photomic called the F2A. So one, you had the needle, and the F2 AS, you had the silicon blue diode. The F2 AS is considered still to be probably the most collectible and sought after of all the F2 standard models.
It was always puzzling to me what's the difference between the cameras, and I would read it and I would forget the following day. So finally, I understand it with your explanation.
Oh, you do? Oh, well, that's good. I'm glad I'm good.
Won't remember anything tomorrow, but right now I understand it. But what's interesting on the topic of what I've learned today, this whole thing of putting the camera lens at f5.6 and cycling through,
Yeah.
I always was puzzled, why would you need that? And in preparation to this, I've read that what effectively does is it's recycles, it basically lets the metering understand what aperture you're using on the camera, and that way you'll get the correct reading.
That's right.
I never knew that. I thought you just have to do that for whatever reason, So, but it's always interesting to know, because one of the things, once we start to get to kind of F3 and further cameras, everything becomes a little bit more simplified, I would say, in terms of design, but also this little technology comes in where things just work. While in very early iterations like Nikon F and Nikon F2, what they had to go with just light meter readings, where they learned from a solenoid type of light meters to proper TTL, you could see the technology evolving, and that's why you start to see so many different prisms being released over time for the same model. While, let's say, once we go to Nikon F3, it's pretty much built in.
That's right. And in fact, what we try and do, we probably have spoken about this before, but over 20 years ago, we started a magazine, and it was founded by myself and Gillian Greenwood, who's the senior features editor of Nikon Owner, and Uri Zakai, who's my business partner. And in each issue of this magazine, and I'll show you, here is the current version with this lovely cover by John Archer Thompson, and it always features a kind of a history of Nikon continuing. Here's a shot here of the first day of the Nikon F release, and this now goes all over the world in print or electronic version. So if you like that early stuff, or even if you like more contemporary things, this is a wonderful magazine. It's a great vehicle. There's some fascinating people who've written for us. I'm, honoured to say we've had people like, for many years, she still contributes work, which is Heather Angel, the sort of doyenne of nature photographers. You've got Annie Carhill, Joe McNally, Jim Brandenburg, Moose Peterson. The list goes on. And future issues, we've got Gillian is interviewing Joe Furmanovsky, who just celebrated 50 years of photography as an icon of music photography. And I'm going to be doing an interview with David Yarrow later on in the year. And I believe you've got a special, haven't you?
That's right.
For our viewers.
That's right. Some of you may know Becky Danese. She also writes articles for the Nikon Owner magazine.
Becky, forgive me for not mentioning
from this little channel that we run. So,
that's right.
But digital subscription normally is £49 a year. In fact, we actually have £15 off at the moment. So that will make it £34. All the links and the codes, code is Kon15, is in the description of this video, so you can go there, subscribe. The good thing about digital magazine over printed one, you don't need to wait for one to arrive. You can just go to the website and you have access for over 20 years of magazines, really. So you can start with the first issue and work your way up.
Over 80 issues.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Kon15, it's a nikonownershop.com, a digital subscription.
Yes. And one of the things that we do rely on is finding out about you and your photography, and if you've got work that you would like to see featured, we definitely want to hear from you. So you can always email me, editor@nikonownermagazine.com. I'd be very happy to see your work, and Katrin Rukart, who runs a lot of our stuff here, would be delighted too. So
Absolutely. People are still using their Nikon cameras. So Nikon F10 is being used on a daily basis. Motley is asking interesting question. I will rephrase it a little bit. So he says, what lens from that time you would like to use currently on the latest digital mirrorless camera via adapter? What are the best lenses that were produced at the time?
What I would have liked to
Yes,
use?
absolutely.
Gosh, because if you're using it on a mirrorless camera,
Yes, we're going to put adapter on it.
it's really going to push those optics to their limits, isn't it? But it would be fun to do. I would say the 85-1.8,
85-1.8, okay.
the 58mm 1.4, and the 35 F2.
Interesting. And if you look at pre-eyeglass, is there any legendary Nikon lens that you would recommend everyone to try?
Oh, to try?
Yeah. Like, let's say, if you're looking at, let's say, early Leicas, yeah, so you're looking at Barnex and they say 53.5 Elmar is the one. You just need to get it with this body. So which pre-eye lens would you say for people to get when they buy their first Nikon F?
To use or to collect?
Well, let's say to use and to collect. So we can have two options for them.
All right. Well, if I was collecting, I would want the 4 lenses that were introduced with the Nikon F, where the focal lengths are marked in centimeters. So instead of 50mm f2, it would be 5 cm f2 Nikkor S, and these are called tick mark lenses.
Okay.
It would be that. It would be the 10.5.
Oh yes, 105.
Yeah, the 135 3.5. And I would also include the 5.8 centimeter 1.4. I love those lenses. In fact, I've been trying to acquire those tick mark lenses, but the prices sometimes are eye-watering.
And let's say if you lower the budget a little bit, which lens would you recommend? What would you recommend as a starting point? It would be 50mm to go with it, or 35?
50.
50?
Yeah.
F2 1.4?
Well, I've got both. I've got the F2 version, and I've got on my black F over there, that rather battered one on the side of my library there, is a 5.8 centimeter 1.4.
So the answer is you got to get them both. And you need to get each version of Nikon F as well as F2 to be a true collector.
Well, yes. Collectors do like to have different iterations, don't they?
Yes, absolutely.
In fact, we've got a few more pictures of some other F2s in there that may be of interest.
Definitely. Let's share them. So let's see. I've got F2 25th anniversary. Shall we share that one?
Absolutely.
Let's have a look at that. There's quite a few interesting lenses there, and I'll just have a little slideshow there.
Yeah. That was only available in America. It was the 25th anniversary of Nikon being set up in the USA, and so that had that badge on the which you can just see.
It almost looks like it doesn't belong there.
Oh no, it's actually. I think they did a poor job of Nikon made a terrific camera, and I think someone in America made them up and just stuck them on the front.
Oh, I see.
And I don't think it's a good look.
So it's almost, it's almost they just got a glue and just slapped it on, isn't it?
That's what it looks like. And I think if Nikon had done it themselves in Japan, I think they would have. I think the designers there would have thrown up their hands in horror and demanded more of an inscription or something like that. We've also got the big back.
The F2H.
Oh, the high speed, yeah.
Yeah, let's have a look at that. It looks like there are at least 2 or 3 motor drives attached.
Yeah, well,
to the camera.
It's called the MD100.
Okay, so why would we have such a big bulk underneath the camera? What does it do?
Well, it takes these rechargeable batteries, but also AA. So it's once It's a heavy beast. Again, it's pellicle. We've had one or two over the years, and it's a fabulous thing.
So would it take about 8 AA's in the each slot? Is that what it was? Or?
Well, the MD2 takes 5 in each.
5 in each.
So 10. So you're looking at 20, aren't you?
Because I'm thinking F5 is really heavy with 8 batteries in.
Yeah.
So this is probably even heavier than that. Incredible.
It would be, yeah.
Incredible. And that would allow for high frame rate, effectively.
Yes, but you would get through them. So they did nickel cadmium batteries instead that you could put in a charger and charge them up and then just slap them in.
Oh, I see. The rechargeables.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then they also had Nikon F2 data camera.
Yes.
So that's quite an interesting beast.
Yeah.
So tell me, you told me that you can put the date and time in there, and there were some little inserts where you set everything up.
That's right. The focusing screen was called a Type S, and it had a little rebate at the side. And in the MF10 back on the F2 data, you had a little clock, which was analog. So you wound it up and popped it in. And if you wanted to, you could record it and it would show the hands of a clock and the correct time. Above that, you had an analog calendar. So you would dial in the date, which you would obviously have to change by hand.
Incredible.
And then they had some little slot-in things where you could write things on it too that would always be in the rebate part. And the back itself had a flash gun in it, and you could open and close a little aperture in the back door.
So that's how it would basically insert the data onto the film.
That's
with
right.
a little flash.
That's right.
How
and
incredible!
If you added the DS12 servo mechanism, which would then give you aperture priority, you'd have this meter.
I was watching a documentary about the visual effects back in the day when everything was analog.
Yeah.
And the hoops they had to go through to achieve certain effects.
Yeah.
And what you're describing now as well, it's all done analog way. It's so much easier nowadays to do it digitally.
Well, it's funny because I've been trying out a Rolleiflex in the last week or so, a 2.8 GX.
What a beauty.
Yeah. Which has got a built-in TTL. And just before this, I had a phone call from our first customer, who I've mentioned to you before, Derek Cook, and he said, "Oh, well, are you going to buy it?" And I said, "I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I just can't get used to Rolleiflex having TTL exposure metering." And looking through there and just seeing the lights and thinking, am I changing the aperture or am I changing the shutter speed? Is it too low? Because then you have to take your head away. It demands a discipline for you that I'd forgotten about since I had my original Rolleiflex T.
I'm sure it brought a lot of memories.
It did. It is a lovely thing to use, I'd have to say.
Well, you got to roll film. You got to try it.
Courtesy of you. Yes, I'm on my third exposure, so I'm really rattling through it.
So it's 6x6, isn't it? So it would be 12.
Yeah, that's
12
right. 12 frames. Yeah.
Just looking at the comments, and Ron Ferguson says he has 13.5 centimeters, 3.5 lens.
Tick-marked?
Yep, sounds like it.
Oh.
We come and visit you one day.
You're a lucky man, sir.
And David Lewis says, digital Nikon magazine for searching, printed for reading. Colors resolution are better in print than digital. I agree with you. We also have £10 off the printed version as well. Yeah. So you're welcome to do that as well by using content. So what I do is I've started to work my way through Nikon Owners. So I have started with the first issue.
Have you really?
Yeah, because when I started, it was a different thing. You know, you're young and you just want to try different things. And, the older you become, you start to learn more about those highly precision instruments. That's the thing. It's not it's not camera, it's a precision instrument, isn't it? And just to reading the history about it and what photographers were saying at the time, I think it's quite fascinating. So it's too much noise online nowadays. So, reading a real magazine is nice.
Yeah, because I think that sort of really the way the magazine works is a kind of a dignified enthusiasm, and which seems to people seem to appreciate, really.
Indeed. Well, we're just over 3:15. Gray, have we covered F2s, or is there anything else for us to add?
Can I look at the images?
Yeah. And then I'm going to ask you just a couple of less related questions, but just from our audience. And then we're going to wrap up. Bottom left. The Titan.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a beautiful camera. Why did they call it Titan?
Because the camera is made of titanium.
I see.
And they did two versions. One has the Titan logo in white cursive script, and the other one doesn't have the name at all. It just says F2T by the serial number, and that's now known as the no-name Titan. And people collect both models. This is another wonderful Tony Hurst picture of. I think it's got everything in that picture. It's got all the ephemera, the instructions, the box, just a flawless collection. And these are becoming more and more difficult to find.
Was it designed as a kind of a limited edition at the time, or?
Yes, I think. I mean, I can get it. I think there probably weren't any more than 5,000 or 6,000 pieces made originally for the whole world, really.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely want one of those.
Do you?
Yeah, it just looks beautiful, and I like the black finish on it.
Yes,
it's got a different.
It's matte.
Yeah, it's very nice finish. Because let's say Nikon F3 has more of a glossy finish compared to that.
That's right. Well, that was really when they brought in Giugiaro, the Italian designer that took over those. Him and our friend Tetsuro Goto worked together to start this new range of designs, and we'll come on to that when we go F3.
Yes, a lot of people in the chat wants us to talk film too, just a live stream on early films.
On early film? Oh, right.
Because you are collecting those.
I am, yeah.
Stay tuned.
I've got a huge...
We can definitely talk about the different formats, perhaps, different films. It's absolutely incredible. A lot of people asking, how did you get into cameras, and did you ever think of selling other brands, not just Nikon?
Well, that's a good question, because we did originally. We sold Leica, we sold Mamiya, we sold Minolta, we sold Bronica, we sold Hasselblad, Mamiya, RB67, Bronica, ETRS, Eyes, SQAs, GS1s, and things like that. But because we were so small and had no real clout, I felt that we would just disappear, really, because, why would someone come to us? Because then someone who had a much wider range in stock, and it was really, I had this idea of maybe we should specialize and just do one brand. And although there were, I knew at least one Solus Leica shop, which was, I believe, Hove Cameras, down in Brighton, and there was, a great following there. And I had this idea: why don't we try Nikon only? And the more my contemporaries in the field told me that it was an insane thing to do, the more I was determined. Because I thought, well, unless I try it, I won't know if it works. And if I don't try it, well, I don't think we'll be around.
That's right. Who knew that 40 years later you would be sitting here on a live stream,
I know,
talking into the abyss?
It's extraordinary, and it's enabled me to work with some of the greatest photographers and musicians and filmmakers and actors and actresses in the world, really. And and also meeting all our clients, which is always a thrill to do, and I never ever take it for granted.
Incredible. Thank you very much for joining us today, finding the time.
Well, thank you for inviting me again.
We shall continue.
Yeah.
In another month.
That's right.
At part 3 and part 4, and could be a film live stream. I think there's so many topics we can cover. We have so many ideas because we want to talk about photographic industry back in the day.
Oh,
and that we will get there someday.
Yeah, some stories, some camera shop stories.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then obviously the whole camera shop landscape have changed in London as well. And that's something we wanted to do as well. Yeah. But stay tuned. Thank you very much for joining us today. If you haven't given this stream a like, please do. If you haven't subscribed yet, we greatly appreciate this. I hope you're gonna have a great weekend. Stay tuned for more videos from Grace Westminster channel.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Don't forget, subscribe to Nikon Owner. You won't regret it. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.